Welcome to another edition of Interludes with Chris Mackenzie. And once again, great joy and excitement because we have Terence Donovan in the studio.
Hello.
Again.
How are you?
Terry, lovely for you to come back again.
Thank you.
Come trailing in and bringing all your bits and pieces with you.
Yes, I did. What were we talking about before? We were talking about my son's 21st.
That's right.
Yes, Paul
Yes.
Patrick Donovan.
Paul Patrick Donovan.
Yes, a good lad, a good lad.
Is he?
Yes, he had a wonderful time.
Good.
Absolutely wonderful time. Got lovely presents.
That's what
It's
you
nice to be 21. I don't know where I was at 21. I
Well-
was in the army somewhere at Puckapunyal.
Were you?
Yeah.
No, you didn't have much of a celebration that day.
No, I didn't.
No.
And so I was feeling enormously generous,
Mm-hmm.
and I got him an airfare to Europe and back, and I
Really?
gave it to them for his birthday.
Wow. I thought you were talking about being enormously generous at Puckapunyal, buying a round of drinks for the fellas. But
For my son,
For
I
your
thought once in one's life one has to put one's
Well, he hasn't
hand
been.
deeply in one's pocket.
Absolutely. And he hasn't been to Europe.
He has, actually. He's a well sort of travelled young man.
Good.
I've taken him to Los Angeles, to Hollywood. I've taken him to Fiji. I've taken him to London. So he's been there before, but he hasn't been there on his own. So this will cut the umbilical cord.
Absolutely.
Which will be wonderful. What I actually didn't tell him was I only put a deposit on it.
And if
So
he
I've
doesn't-
got to work like buggery to pay it off now.
And if he doesn't behave himself, he won't get it.
Well, there you go. There you go.
You'll go on a short trip
Yeah.
to Queensland.
Absolutely.
Listen, television, your life in television.
Television,
Television's life with you. Would you
Yeah,
ever-
well, I am so grateful that television came in my way, because I actually when I started in the business, I worked with Crawford Productions on a program called Consider Your Verdict, which was a police series in the courts. I played a young lawyer, and of course those days, and still now, there's a bit of controversy about it, but you had your cloak and your wig.
Of course.
And I had this terrible wig, which I'm sure it was infested with stuff. It was itchy and scratchy, and I was just moving my head around all the time. And
You mean living things?
I thought, well, something was happening, and every time I leant forward, the wig sort of came forward. And of course, in those days, they started the tape, and you just kept talking. I had the script in front of me, and I could look down at the lines, and just because they gave you too much to do on the day, and you just had to keep it going. And there's wonderful guys like Keith Eden and Sid Connerbeer, wonderful, bloody marvellous actors. And I just learnt from them. But the most amazing thing about those times and doing those programs were that some of the people in the witness box really would get off the track. So we'd be leading the witness, and they'd say, "Oh, but I was there on the 15th of August." And it said on there it was on the 27th. And I say, "Don't you mean it was on the 27th? And he said, oh yes, that's right, 27th. Jesus, did we stretch the truth? So it was a fun time.
You would have not been a good lawyer.
Oh, I thought I was quite good. You know, I could, at least my eyes were better then, and I could see the lines from a distance. It's a bit bloody different now, I'll tell you. And so I worked with Crawfords on those early days, some of the radio at the ABC, and then I went overseas to London. I came back in '68, and yet again I was employed by Crawfords to be a baddie, actually, in Homicide with Leonard Teal.
Leonard Teal, yes. Oh, gosh.
Oh, Len, I love a suburb country, a land of sweeping plains. You know the joke with Len, please forgive me, my dear friend, but Len had an accident, and he was doing some gardening, and a big rock fell on his hand, and he got 2 fingers out of the way, but the middle 2 got crushed, and he had them off.
Really?
Yeah. so he had a hand with just 3 fingers on it. And of course, the great joke at Crawford's was saying to Len when we went to the pub, said, 4 beers, please. And he only put up 2 fingers. So Len and myself became friends, and I was in that show, and then Hector Crawford asked me if I'd like to join them, and he put me under contract.
Oh,
which was very nice, but then he realised his mistake, and
how quickly?
Within a couple of weeks, as a matter of fact, he said, "Jesus, we playing this bloke for nothing." So he rang me up and said, "Terry, would you like to come in and learn about how our company works and work behind the scenes?" I thought, what a wonderful opportunity.
Yes.
So in I went. And I timed scripts, and I did post-sync work, and I interviewed people and did all that.
Interesting.
And which was very, very intriguing for me to see the other side of how the whole thing worked, you know. And so I worked with Dorothy Crawford and assisted her. And then when we had interviews, I went through and read with other people and things like that. It was just wonderful to do. The whole idea of that really was to hold on to anybody's services that they needed. So the program they were trying to sort out at that time, there was Gerard Kennedy was in a show with them, and
wasn't he in Homicide too?
He was in Hunter.
Hunter, yeah.
And then that wasn't doing as well as they thought, so they wanted to keep him and put him into a show. Channel 9 desperately wanted a police show to compete against Homicide, so they transported him over to Division 4. Now Division 4 they were going to name was going to be Saints and Sinners, but it didn't turn out like that. Because St Kilda fathers didn't think that was appropriate. So they changed it to Division 4. Gerard became the main character in that, and I was his offsider. You know, it was like Superman and Superboy.
Wonderful. Listen,
and
we're
that
going to have
was
some music.
Fantastic.
Can you hold your water for a little while?
Oh, absolutely. I've got a hold of it now.
It's from the show that you were in, Chicago.
Yes.
It's All I Care About.
Oh,
with
yes.
you singing.
Oh, that's me. Definitely me.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the silver-tongued prince of the courtroom, the one, the only, Mr. Billy Flynn. Everybody ready? Hit it! I don't care about expensive things, cashmere coats, diamond rings, don't mean a thing. All I care about is love. That's what I'm here for. I don't care for wearing suit cravats, ruby studs, satin spats, don't mean a thing. All I care about is love.
All he cares about is love.
Give me 2 eyes of blue, softly saying, I need you. Let me see her standing there. Honest mister, I'm a millionaire. I don't care for any fine attire Vanderbilt might admire. No, no, not me. All I care about is love.
All he cares about is love.
It may sound odd, all I care about is love.
That's what he's here for.
Baba, 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 boo, boo, boo. Honest to God, all I care about is love.
All he cares about is love.
Show me a long, long raven hair flowing down about to there. Let me see her running free. Keep your money, that's enough for me. I don't care for owning pack-on cars or smoking long black cigars. No, no, not me. All I care about is doing the guy in who's picking on you, twisting the wrist that's turning the screw. All I care about is
Terry,
Well, there you go.
you have very winning ways.
I
you know.
know. It's just so beautiful, isn't it?
Wonderful,
I love
yes.
it. Oh, God.
Yourself in Chicago. Oh,
Absolutely.
Lord.
There was a wonderful thing about that show and that scene that we did before that that number was that I had to run up on the steps behind in a white suit. And of course, Richard Werrett, what he'd done, he'd had boy, girl, all dressed as girls. And when I got to the top of the stairs, they all had their arms up, and Gary Ginniver had this big hairy armpit, and DJ Foster was on the other side with another big hairy armpit, and they were supposed to be ladies. They had big fans. I sometimes pulled their hairs. We had a great time.
Listen, why don't they bring it back?
Well,
How many years ago was that?
Well, I
Could
hope
you
they do bring it back before I die.
I was going to say, could you do all that again?
Absolutely.
Too many years passed?
Oh, mate, I'd be into it like a shot.
Well, why don't you do something about
Oh,
it?
well, it costs money, dear.
No, money?
Yeah.
Oh, well, come on, yes.
No, it costs money.
Somebody
to
will
do it.
win tats and they'll give it to you.
Yeah, well, let's see. Let's hope.
Okay, well, let's go on. There was something else you were in that was a lot of fun
Yeah.
that you enjoyed.
I
heaps.
was very privileged to be in a great production of of Follies. It was a concert version. And another Sondheim musical, which I seem to do quite a bit of Sondheim. I had the cast list read and fantastically well. It was Robert Gard, Ron
Robert
Hadrick,
Gard, yes.
yeah, Nancy Hayes, Maureen Howard, Leonie Page, Suzanne Johnson, Tony Lamond, Judy Connelly. Oh, it just went on. Kerry Bedell.
And you.
And me, and more. Joan Sidney,
Stuart
Jill
Wagstaff even.
Perriman.
Stuart
it was
Wagstaff.
Amazing. We
Wonderful.
just had the most amazing
How long
group of
was
people.
that? Just in Sydney?
Just in Sydney at the Opera House, and it's just a pleasure to work there, not only with this great company of people, but also with, a feeling that it's just wonderful show business. And there's just, I was in awe of them all because I have worked with so many of them before. Judy Connelly was in Chicago, and she played Mama Morton, and she was absolutely superb. It was like Mae West coming out. It's fantastic. I love her. and Nancy,
And how long
of
did
course.
it run up there then?
Well, we only ran for a sort of couple of weeks.
Oh,
But,
what?
Well, they couldn't. All those people were so busy doing other things. You couldn't harness all those people to just do it in a long run or anything like that. But it was wonderful to do. And
Is
it
that
was
a
just-
problem, do you think, these days, that a lot of actors have commitments at long-term runs, perhaps on television, and to be able to get away and do a long run in the live theatre is probably becoming quite difficult these days?
It is, but there's this very limited amount of theatre work around at the moment. The thing is that what has been linked up is doing television does tend to sort of give you that contact with the audience out there. People know you from television. So if you're running on a in a show that's very popular, you do have a following.
Yeah.
And so the theatre people are trying to use that. And we see that a lot with the Melbourne Theatre Company or the Sydney Theatre Company. People who've had enormous amounts of a theatre experience going back to the theatre to help the theatre bring the audiences back in there. Johnny Wood's one, he's a great friend.
Oh, yeah.
And many others that have, made a mark for themselves on television. Television itself connects with the public.
Very much so.
And the image of that does help the theatre a great deal to bring those people in. Nicole Kidman, she's, after all the work she's done in film and television, she's also gone back to the theatre, and that helps. Everything that can help the theatre. The theatre itself is just the most wonderful place to learn and to absorb so many things. Unfortunately, television is like instant coffee. They pour it all together and you've got to do it immediately, instantly. And hope you don't have many opportunities, especially in commercial television, to get it wrong.
Oh, right.
There's no time. It's all by the budget. It's all by the clock. And so they try to get people who are very professional to be able to do it. They're very wary of some people who haven't got that experience. So it's not an easy task for an actor to get in there and learn the lines quickly. Some actors can, and some don't handle it very well. And I must say, when I was in Cop Shop, which was with Channel 7, and I was there for 2 years, it was a nightmare. A nightmare because in that, by the end of the week, we finished on Friday, about 6 or 7 at night on Friday, and then they'd hand you the next week's scripts to learn over the weekend to be ready on Monday. And that is an enormous load. And especially the part I played, I just played this character in there that was the main character at this desk, and of course I was, it was verbal diarrhea for me. I just had to try to remember all these bloody lines all the time, and it wasn't as if you had a normal conversation with someone. It was all factual stuff.
Oh, right.
And I had enormous problems, trying to sort of get through all that because you didn't have any respite. Only at the weekend when I could have a drink.
Well, you're going to have a time, not for a drink of water, actually.
Oh, right.
We don't provide anything else here.
Oh.
Because we're going to play some music. It's Tony Lamond with the Channel 9 Orchestra singing Better with a Band.
I like to sing, but it's better with a band. I like to play the piano, but it's better with a grand. Ask any bass or soprano from the Met to Dixieland, singing, maybe swinging, but baby, it's better with a band. Give me a bass, that's a perfect place to start. Then add a drummer with rhythm and you're sure to reach my heart. Perhaps a touch of percussion, now we're getting close to art. Singing, maybe swinging, but baby, it's better with a band. So much better with a band. Say, we can use a clarinet or two to start out. Say, it sounds so good that even Benny Goodman would eat his heart out. suit me to a T. How about a banjo, a southern fried, as chicken fricassee? Let's have a harp, the bells to sell the melody. Singing, maybe swinging, but baby, it's better with a band. No band has wings without strings to fill the air. No doubt the swell of the cello has a grace beyond compare. Tell of romance with as many violins as you can spare. Singing, maybe swinging, but baby, it's better with a band. And a stage with great musicians, I feel just like a rabbit in the company of great magicians. I like to sing, but it's better with a band. Carnegie Hall, a conductor and an orchestra on hand. Ask any bass or soprano, from the Met to Dixieland. Singing, maybe swinging, but baby, it's better with a band. So much better with a band. It's better with a band.
Boy, she belt out a
She
tune.
can. Oh, she's fantastic.
Tony Lamond,
Absolutely
wonderful.
superb.
Yes. Now, there's something we were talking about in that break, and you were with Breaker Morant.
Yes, Breaker Morant in 1977. I did 3 plays with the Melbourne Theatre Company. One was The Fall Guy. The other was The Club, which was Davis Williamson's The Club. That was the first production of that, and I played Laurie, which was the coach. And then there was Breaker Morant, and I played Breaker Morant on the stage of the Athenaeum Theatre.
Did you know?
Yep. And that was quite an experience to do all those 3 plays. They're all Australian plays, all new productions, and we should be doing a lot more of that, just
Oh,
showing
indeed, we
the
should.
history of our our present day problems and hassles,
Yeah.
and also our history, which we find, and I find, the more I learn about life, is that history repeats itself time and time and time again.
That's interesting.
With people and attitudes and countries and everything. It always repeats itself, not in the same form, but in a form which is greed, envy, jealousy, love,
How about
hatred, power,
power?
and all
Yes,
that.
all that,
It all builds up to power and
Yeah.
control, doesn't it? But Breaker Morant was very interesting area of our history in the Boer War. And Breaker Morant's character was just an amazing piece of history about this man who was actually a fantastic horse rider, and he could train horses, and then he went off to the Boer War and was an officer at the Boer War, and he did things against the Boers that they had already been doing against the Australian troops and British troops there. Ultimately, Kitchener turned around and said that we've got to make an example of someone, and they picked out
Him.
and a fellow called Hancock. Actually, it was made into a film, but firstly at the Athenaeum Theatre they came to see us there, and Bruce Barris has said to me, and he sent me a telegram saying, look, from London, saying, oh Terry, we're getting Breaker Morant, I want you to play Breaker Morant. And I held on to the telegram, as a matter of fact, and but as it happened, the powers to be wanted a name person in there, so I didn't actually play it. But it was the most amazing, wonderful piece of history of our early history, of how soldiers were put into a situation where they either survived or they went under.
Absolutely.
And I found that really intriguing, and I went to the Mitchell Library and studied all about that time and the area of what Breaker Morant and those people had gone through. And there's some wonderful photographs and photography of that time as well, even though it went back that far.
But to take that even further, you did some special reading of that Break Morant in England, didn't
Yeah,
you?
no, it was here.
Here?
It was here, and I was asked to do a reading from Belinda Books here of Break Morant. I did all the voices, and I had the most intriguing thing. I had this South African voice to do.
Oh, that's
with
difficult.
You know, Buddha and his the rednecks. I had to keep rolling my R's like this, you know, like Tony Craig doing the cricket.
That's right, it's difficult.
It was difficult. And then I had a Welshman named Llewellyn, and Llewellyn had to interview this man, and I had worked out the two voices and how to do it one over the other, and it was really quite difficult. It did take a bit of time, but I did all the Scots accents, all the British accents, all the Australian accents as well. That went on to Chicago, and that was actually won an award there in Chicago, the Audio Book Award. And the other one that was competing for that was Jeremy Irons, and he was reading Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita.
And you won.
And I won. Anyway, it was very nice. It was nice to get. Nobody heard about it, but still, I've still got this thing here that says I did do it, so it was really nice.
Okay, now listen. Can you come back and do another one, because we've still got a lot to talk about.
Right, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
We'll see you back here soon. I hope.
Right.
Terrific.
So,
Bye for now.
So nice to be with you.